Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the panel discussion dubbed the 2019 Challenge. I would like to introduce my panel later to you, but first a quick introduction of what we are going to discuss. 2019 is just around the corner. I was in Malta last week, and I noticed that all the pubs and the bars already introduced events for Christmas Eve parties and New Year's Eve parties, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, yes, it's only a few weeks away, the New Year. 2018 has been, let's call it an interesting year. 2017 we've seen a roller coaster in the crypto market. 2018 we started coming crashing down to, well, quite the lows in the crypto market. We've seen some regulators calling the Bitcoin securities or not securities, accepted or not accepted. So 2019 will obviously be equally a new and an interesting year. To talk about, well, that was a bad omen for the new year.
Big boom.
To talk about the new year, we have a few panel members which I'm going to introduce you now. First of all, we have Jan Robert Scholten. He is the founder of the Crypto Academy, and the Crypto Academy is educating investors in the crypto market. Secondly, we have from Los Angeles, JD Salvego. He's the founder and the CEO of Legion Ventures. And he's also a well-known advisor in crime, I think. Correct. Then thirdly, we have Dr. David Mazaros. David Mazaros is not only a good friend of mine, he's also my business partner. David is a lawyer, and together with me, he writes about the blockchain and the legal and regulatory requirements. And fourthly, we have Martijn Bolt, and Martijn is a blockchain implementation specialist. Well, in a way that doesn't say anything, but it means that he helps people cross the digital revolution challenges and helps companies guiding us through that new revolution. First of all, I would like to have a quick question to all four of you in, let's say, less than a minute. If you could answer the following questions, and I'll give you some time to think about it already. But firstly, what would you see as the game changer or the big challenge for 2019?
Yeah. If I take a look at with the head of investors, it's very important that for the crypto scene that the regulators are more accommodative, and also that the SEC and the state will approve finally an ETF on Bitcoin, a future on the Bitcoin with a real underlying Bitcoin, because that will give more trust in the market, getting more mature, yep. And then the more institutional investors will follow suit, and also more the private investors.
Thank you. JD?
I think what's happening actually right now this year is a really good thing. I feel like the market overall, just like Bitcoin, is kind of finding like a base, like a stock. And what I think for 2019 is that it's going to kind of shake the trees for a lot of the bad projects with no substance, the scams, this and that, and it'll kind of make the cream rise to the top. I think STOs will be the future, though I don't think ICOs are going to die for a while. I think ICOs will stay more relevant in the West, like they still are, sorry, in the East, in Asia, where I work a lot, where they still are. But I think the STOs would be great if countries can not follow the U.S. in their current state, which is the Reg D, which really kind of is not a great opportunity for startups, especially pre-seed new projects. So that's where I'm at with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. David?
I kind of expect a normalization of the regulatory scene, so we would have kind of a middle ground in the regulatory frameworks, because what we have right now is that
we have a bad omen again in 2019.
I don't even know.
It's all going to crap right now. This is over. That's it, guys. We're done. Check out. All right. I'm gonna go back to be a farmer like I was in my past life.
because we kind of have extremes on the both ends of the spectrum. You know, we have extremely friendly and innovation-friendly jurisdictions, and we have super hard, you know, hammering down everything is a security, everything has to be licensed. So I think we need kind of a middle ground.
Okay, thank you. Martijn,
I think it's important to stay level-headed. The market is really based on sentiment most of the time. We have this peak in the price and the big volatility after that. Everybody moves from that basically still. Next year, maybe the prices stay like this, maybe they go lower, maybe they go up. If they go up, we're going to get a new hype cycle, and well, that's mostly indicative of bad regulation, for example. So we need to stay level-headed when we think about regulation. But when the prices go lower, people make weird jumps and basically start farming again.
Yeah.
And that's a risk as well, because then innovation just stifles.
Okay, thank you.
Stay focused.
Thank you. Just one thing I would like to come back to. You mentioned the hype cycle. JB, if you think about the hype cycle, would it be good or would it be bad for the market in general?
The hype cycle currently?
Yeah. Well, if we get a new one, like we had,
I'd
say the end of 2017, we had a big hype cycle regarding the Bitcoin.
I don't think it's hard, but I don't think it'll ever happen again, that hype cycle, because retail is too smart, and the technology and the governing structure around the world are too smart now as well. I think the hype would be great. Every startup who's trying to create something loves having access to capital, and capital that's not tied to equity too, that gives you flexibility. Obviously there's the downside that came with all of that we saw, with tons of scams and just really bad projects, things that should never even be funded. I mean, you know, we call them the S-word coins in America. But I think it would be great, because this industry is really revolutionizing the future across the board in every single vertical. So having, and really, as we know, the only way to make progression is with capital, because you can't do anything without capital. It's just the way, that's physics. So we do need another influx. So I hope there is a rush, though I don't think it'll ever be as close to what it was this year.
Okay. David, if you think of a hype cycle, does a hype cycle have any influence on future regulatory and legal
Absolutely. It can either reassure regulators of their previous beliefs, or it can scare them, and that can kind of come in the form of a stronger, stricter regulation, or all of a sudden one. Maybe it's not a fully fleshed out regulation, maybe it's a bill that wasn't really thought about, and they just quickly want to put it in, you know, in a scope of activities in a regulatory framework, and that could be mostly bad, in my opinion.
Correct, I can understand that. Yeah. Jan Robert, I would imagine that the hype cycle quite influences your business as well, the crypto category.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the market crashed approximately 70%, most alts 90%, Bitcoin roughly 7% as well. And but what I see is that the volatility dropped to a very low level. If you take a look at the Bitcoin, it's very interesting that the volatility in the S&P 500, for instance, in equities was higher last week than Bitcoin now. But this relative quietness is quietness for the storm ahead. Yeah. And I think that the storm ahead will lift the boats higher. What I see that many private investors, the Moon and Lambo types, they thought for a quick buck to come, they are getting shaked out, or they are shaken out already. And I think the real smart investors and the investors are smarter than most people and the most regulators expect. The regulators must not. They say that they are protecting the small investors. I don't believe that. Okay. Because the regulators are most for the institutionals, the banks, the insurance. They say they are protecting. Yep. But the most regulators don't know anything about cryptos.
No, they don't. But we'll come back to that.
Okay, but this makes me very angry because they are taking a look at multi-level marketing companies. They can go ahead. The multi-level marketing, they said we are doing something with crypto mining. The quick buck hunters, they go for that, the quick buck, and they are going away. And the real smart investors, they see the opportunity to invest. And if I would take a call on this. I think the 6,000 level of Bitcoin is a very severe, solid bottom. And below that, everything is a buy in Bitcoin. But I think this very good, in crypto is a very good low level to invest. Of course, you have to do your own research.
I need to cut you off because we do have other questions.
Yeah, of course.
Martijn, you facilitate and guide companies through the digital revolution and transformation. The hype cycle obviously influences your business as well, I would imagine.
The amount of requests I get from companies is absolutely intensified when the prices go up.
Okay.
I decline all those offers basically because I'm not in the business of making a quick buck, as mentioned before. I really focus on structural infrastructure and bringing together public and private parties in partnerships and work for the long term on feasible models. And basically, price volatility is not interesting to me in any way.
Understand. JP, as an investor and as an advisor, 2019, what type of ICOs or what type of verticals do you expect will be very popular in 2019?
I think supply chain will always be there, financial will always be there, and fintech. I do see a wave of entertainment actually popping up right now with a number of companies. But I think in 2019, only the strongest will survive. And it's going to fall back to more traditional tech startup where you actually have to have more of a real team and kind of real advisors and real substance. The funding is slowing down a little bit, or they're doing different models with equity and securities or equity and utility tokens, and they're really going to be looking for stronger teams. And also, I think some of the the funds which got into it for the high volatility will also be decreasing their investments and looking more to stronger teams and not just for the quick buck, because we see what happened this year, and also regulation is changing. So I think next year will be a lot more open, but at the same time not constricted in certain areas too, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to 2019? Will it be a good year?
Yes, completely. The last few months have been, I won't say stressful, but they've been interesting. I think it's a necessity. But I'm excited to get past this stage and get into 2019 where there's a little bit more freedom again.
Yes.
And the market takes some turns.
Okay. Thank you. David, in 2018 we saw some regulators, let's say in the Emirates, Emirates and Liechtenstein make some good progress in regulatory developments. Do you see 2019 as a continuation of that, or are we seeing a separation between the men and the boys?
That's a good one. But I absolutely see a continuation of that, especially in the European Union. ESMA is now preparing a regulatory framework as well. I'm just a little bit afraid that it's going to be too much of a copycatting of the US and thereby the SEC. I definitely don't want a strict, really dogmatic mindset regarding tokens, because it can be so many things, and they really want to forcefully classify it into one asset class, whereas it actually could be just basically anything in the world, just digital.
Correct. Although I love listening to my own voice, I think it's always good to have questions from the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh no, we all finished up. Yes, you have a question, I did.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time in Malta. Oh, sorry, sorry, thanks. So, preface it with, we spent a lot of time in Malta. We've chosen Malta for our jurisdiction because for all the reasons that we have. If you were to evaluate Singapore, Malta, Bermuda, BVI, Gibraltar, Australia, Lithuania, Switzerland, how would you rank them? If you were starting a business today, where would you go 1, 2, 3?
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
You don't get to explain why. Just like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. I would definitely. You have your company in Malta?
Yeah.
So I would definitely say it's a very nice interim position, because it has innovation-friendly regulation, although it's very recent, so the ink on the paper has not even dried yet. I wouldn't really call that law. but it still has a prestigious reputation among international circles, but is a bit far away from the onshore regulations. So it has certain flexibility to it. I would definitely deem it as one of the better options for crypto and blockchain ventures. And yeah, of course, we always have the traditional offshore ones, BVI, Cayman, whatever you mentioned. It's always nice. They have loose securities regulations, or sometimes non-existent, and they have the secrecy laws, but that's just basically the core of the business.
It really depends on the stage your company is in. Usually in the Americas, the innovation happens, the new projects start, and a lot of new technologies come forward. Then the Asian countries copy that basically, and then in the European Union we try to regulate that. So it depends on what your long-term goal is with the company, what the product is, what audience you're aiming at, and what stage your company is in, and then you can also start basing on that.
Okay, you both ducked the question. You're starting a business, you get to choose one place. What do you choose?
One place?
Yeah.
Just one place.
Yep, you're starting your company. You gotta start it tomorrow. You gotta get it. Now, that's the question.
Yeah, I would say Netherlands because Netherlands is pretty good at innovation, but also has a very stable ecosystem when you look at it integral. So if you integrally look at regulation, if you look at the way the Dutch culture discusses these topics, we have a very integral approach. That's not the fastest approach, but it's a very democratic approach.
It welcomes innovation as well. And the Dutch Foundation and other corporate solutions, I don't want to go into details, are very good and very innovation friendly as well.
Yeah, and the access to all authorities, the access to the large companies, the multinationals, it's all here. So you can really move fast, although the process itself is slow.
JD, from an investor point of view, what jurisdictions would you...
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on that. and no offense to Amsterdam or anything. I've just expanded into Malta for my company and working with a lot of the other regulators and consulting companies down there. We're partnering on services and stuff. And I think what you had said, it depends. This thing keeps falling, so my apology. It depends really what vertical you're in, what stage of your company. Also, what are you, an ICO, a startup with an ICO, an STO, an exchange? Because that defers everything. To me, that changes everything. I think Malta is great right now. I would say they're almost number one. But you can go to Estonia right now for an ICO and basically launch it for about $4,000 and get it done in a month. But you're in Estonia, And then you go to Singapore, and Singapore to me right now has more regulation than those two as well. But Singapore is a very great spot for both ICO, STO, and exchanges. So I think if you had an exchange, I would probably go to Singapore or Malta. But then it also depends on, because let's look at this from a go-to-market strategy position. You're only talking about these hubs to just for the law and for the license. Okay, you still have to market the product. So it doesn't really, in essence, it doesn't matter where you set up because you still have to market it. So to me, I look at that. Where are your strong points in marketing? Where are your quickest ways to penetrate a market? Where are your partnerships? Where is your financing coming from, whether it's retail or VC? What communities and infrastructures can you get involved with in each of Malta? Phenomenal. I went down there and literally in a month and a half I had partnerships set up and a huge network, which is how I ended up speaking here because of Malta. Singapore is great too. Estonia, it's cheap. That's all I can say about it. So to me, you have to, I'm a very analytical person. You have to look at all those factors before you decide on. Those are my top three. Yeah. And then you go on the pros and cons of what suits your company.
Yeah. So I think actually JD touches on an excellent point. It's not just where the regulatory environment or infrastructure is very comfortable or easy for you. You've got fiscal considerations, you've got legal considerations, regulatory considerations, but also access to resources I think is important, and access to clients is important. And in that sense, Malta is Malta. If you want to have certain access to resources, well, you would find resources in major cities easier than you would find in Malta if you were inclined to have your resources in-house. So there are different considerations. I spent half a year in Hong Kong, depending on the weather, and that's also a great location for setting up a company. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of verticals regarding the financial industry. So even depending on what sector or what vertical you're in, is certainly a consideration you have to take. Yeah. Can I take another question from the audience?
I hear crickets.
Yes,
Exciting crowd here,
I
huh?
had like 50, and I'm just trying to.
No, that's fine.
Come on,
That's
Jimmy,
fine.
ask your question. Come on, Jimmy, I know.
Yeah. Well, then I have a question for Martijn. Martijn, I know that you also are part of a think tank for the European Union. How does the European Union think about the blockchain at the moment?
Yeah, you refer to the European Blockchain Forum and Observatory.
Yeah.
That's from the European Commission. They have recently produced some papers on blockchain and on GDPR especially. That's not any binding legislation, it's just informative to the parliament. What I see is a very well nuanced approach to this entirely new field, this new asset class, and the way companies work with it. The upside to that is that it's very soft touch regulation coming from that. The risk of that is that in the European Union, every country does its own thing, and you don't have a really sound body of regulation in the end.
Okay, but on a scale from 1 to 10, how favorable or how positive is the European Union about the blockchain?
I think very favorable, very, very positive.
Is that an 8, a 9?
At least. Yes.
Do I hear a 10?
Sold.
The discussion over there is very nuanced, it's very professional, and it's very very integral. So it's really with regards to the innovation, with regards to basically how consumers react and respond to the hype cycle, and of course without regulation this sector, this space cannot grow. So
It's not sustainable.
it's not sustainable without it. So I think therefore from Europe we can expect a lot of innovation, but it's going to be slower than, for example, in Hong Kong, where basically everything is okay to go for, and after that we'll see how we'll make ends meet.
Correct. David, we just mentioned briefly the Emirates. They in September announced a new regulatory framework for securities. One of the things I thought was absolutely amazing is that they addressed specifically the white paper. And since the white paper is basically the prospectus that makes it a financial and a legal binding document. I thought it was a good and a significant step. Is that something we will see in other jurisdictions?
Definitely, we already have something like that, and when people try to do think tanks and trying to kind of find a smart way around it is to classify it in such a way that it doesn't qualify as a prospectus, as an official public offering, but they keep it in a private sector, pre-sales, it's just basically a pitch deck, etc. I say and I think that it's a positive step from the Emirates, and it's definitely unforeseen, and I think it's very surprising from that area of the world that they would come up with such a radical and quick decision, and that they actually regulate it so fast. And I think it will have positive effects in the Middle East in general as well.
There's a funny anecdote. David and I have written an article about the developments in Emirates, and one of the things we've written in the article was that the chairman of the regulator was also the Minister of Economics and the Minister of Finance. So you can actually think, what kind of responsibility, what kind of hat, what kind of turban I guess you were wearing when you wrote those new regulatory requirements. Funny enough, my speaking gig in Dubai got cancelled 2 weeks later, so they were, although they were quite transparent, they were not amused with a little bit of criticism. Which was quite funny. JD, looking at the ICO model, is the ICO model sustained in 2019, or are we moving to a different type of funding or a different type of model?
I think both. I think it's going to slow down eventually, and I think probably STOs will prevail, but everyone likes an ICO for obvious reasons, so there's still a lot of markets, especially the East. The East is heavy ICO. I only hear little rumors about STOs there, you know, and obviously Malta went purely forward with, specifically with ICOs. So I think ICOs will be here for a long run, and who knows, maybe some new regulation, a new framework or technology, like the DICO you were talking about. I had no idea what that was. I think that's really incredible. He'll explain to you after, so go bum rush him, you know what I mean? And he'll explain. So I think it's great because with utility tokens, it does create the flexibility for startups to raise capital and liquidity. Still, with the security tokens, you get scrutinized a lot. There's a lot more regulation. There's a lot more equity kind of structure. I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong, but you're still not with this kind of blockchain, decentralized flexibility to do whatever you kind of want, which has its bad sides, as we know, but that's still the benefits of ICO, and I like them way better than STO, to be honest, right now. We'll see as the market develops where my opinion goes.
Okay, thank you. How do you educate your clients regarding ICOs the coming year?
Yeah, we have a checklist of at least 20 points, but the most important thing, whether it's an ICO or an IPO, always you have to take a look what is the business model.
Yeah.
Because when it's only an idea on a paper and it doesn't show revenue streams or profits, then you must not invest, definitely. And like Facebook also with the IPO, people thought, okay, what can you do with free social media platform? But this model is, of course, the revenues of the advertisements. One thing is sort of business model. The second very important thing, I think, also is the team. If you see a big team with only marketers or only tech guys, and no legal bodies or other expertises, then you have to take a very good look if it's good or not. I think the team has to be very good balanced, and if you are doing an ICO or are willing to participate in ICO, do the due diligence. Also on the team with LinkedIn profiles, what is the background? Are they only on paper there? And also another thing is that if a kind of celebrity is promoting something, that's a red flag for me. But anyway, with ICOs, just take a look. Do you have a good feeling with that project? And does it contribute to the world? Does it give a good solution for a problem? That's very basic. And the other thing is that with ICOs, you have to be careful of course, scams. And but that is, in the first place, business model. If there's an income stream and you see a profit in the future, then you can participate in it.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing is also, I would also say, if you are participating or in cryptos, for instance, do 20% of the equity, total equity, and then do at least 20 or 30 ICOs. Also diversify your risk.
Yes.
That is my advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the team is quite important. Question. Could you wait for the microphone, sir?
So you're basically telling us you don't need influencers to do your marketing strategy, and you're also telling us right now that you don't trust the people who have a big expertise within the marketing industry, within the influencer marketing, because I think, in my opinion, it's very important to have, that you have people around you which are surrounded by a big Instagram page or Facebook or LinkedIn pages, and you definitely need those if you want your go-to-market. If you need your go-to-market strategy to do it well, and I think you need those influencers. And you're basically telling us.
I think you made a distinction between paid for and genuine endorsements.
I mean, if I see Steven Seagal or Kim Tradition with an ICO coming in, that is a very big red flag. But when an influential person in the field, if they have a proven track record, whether they are advising ICOs or they are investing in themselves in ICOs, these kind of influencers, yes, you can trust and you can have more confidence. Although it's not a sure bet, of course.
I have a thought on that, which I wouldn't look at. I look at that specifically from the team standpoint, because every other industry pays influencers, celebrity partnerships, pays politicians. We have to be honest about how the world works, and a lot of those are really great companies too. We're just in a world that was full of scams, and even, let's be real too, even the key crypto influencers get paid. So it's not all like innocence here in this market. So I personally would look at the teams, make sure they're valid, and not let Kim Kardashian, but this Kim, I'd be like, but if they got a great team, it is what it is. Money, it takes money to make money. Glitz and glamour, that's how the whole world is work. But you have to weed out the crap that's within this industry.
Absolutely, I agree with that. But looking at the team, if I look behind us, I think this looks very reliable and investable. If you look at this team lineup here, guys, who thinks it's investable? Show of hands, please.
How much do you need?
We got one hand. Wow, that's amazing.
We're doing
for the gentleman.
We're doing a 400 million. We're doing a 400 million hard cap right now. We got just a white paper too, by the way.
Wow, that goes up credibility.
Yeah, we're putting dog walking on the blockchain right now. Revolutionize the world. Trust me. You want to buy our tokens.
You don't often hear that in this market, right? Revolutionize, game changing.
Game changing.
That's
absolutely
rare.
If you're a service provider, which a lot of us are, I love that. I'll pay you with my fairy dust $1 billion token. Get the out of there.
But no, I think it's a legitimate point you made, JD, that the industry is marked with people who, everyone gets paid at the end of the day, and in itself it doesn't need to be bad. And in itself, even in Dubai, that the head of the regulator is also the Minister of Finance. In a way, that doesn't have to be an issue, as long as you're open and transparent about it. And I think transparency is the one thing we're sort of still missing a lot in the industry, and especially in the people in the community. I find transparency and the lack thereof still an issue. I don't know if any of you guys want to chime in.
It should be one of the pillars of this industry, actually. That's what it's based upon. It's a trustless system, transparent. It should be independent of any corruption and influence, and it should be retraceable and checkable. But if you create a flexible, fast system where money flies left and right, also corruption can fly left and right. Scams and favors, and we know the rest of the story.
We are human beings, right?
Yeah.
In core nature.
Yes, yeah. Well, on that note about transparency, David and I are writing a book called Noblesse Oblige. And that's actually, that will be a free book, so we're not plugging it in that sense. It will be free.
He wasn't paid for this as an influencer either, by the way. Genuine.
But we specifically want to make sure that the industry professionalizes. I hear a little music in the background, so I'm guessing our time is up. Am I correct, or can I continue? Is the time up?
Last takeaway.
Time, okay, then I got a quick line of 5 questions, probably with a yes or no answer, or with a one.
Oh, they really want to.
Wrong edge.
I can still do it. JD, 2019, more or less ICOs in 2018.
Oh, less.
Less, okay. Jan Robert, what will be the most invested token or coin in 2019?
I got 2. One is always the Bitcoin.
Yes.
I think it will fly to the 7,400 level when it's taken out the 6,600 level. And no, it's a little bit cursing in the church.
Well, we are in a church, so...
But I would like to say in the crypto church, and I would like to say watch Ripple, because they are doing on the background very good partnerships with banks, consortia. I hate to say that, but if you can't beat the enemy, join the enemy. But Ripple is the coin to take a look at.
Thank you for that one syllable answer.
Thanks.
Martijn, the big shift in the digital transformation, will it happen in 2019, yes or no?
It's going to take a lot of time.
Okay. And David, the last quick question for you. What will the SEC do with the Bitcoin?
If I was a prophet, well, I think positive approach towards it, but they want to have it regulated.
Thank you very much. Martijn, David, JD, Jan Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.